if you would please, I understand that you are supposed to be my class this afternoon. If that's the case, the class always goes by my rules. And so I'm going to give you this handout so that we can get started. We will be relatively timely. There's some over here and some over there. What the handout contains is a list of courses. These are courses that I have taught over the years that I've been here. You now have an opportunity, since we're in pre-registration, you now have an opportunity to sign up and choose any 3 classes you would like. And what I'm going to do is tell you a little bit about the classes, and in that context, tell you a lot about me. And I think that will get us through our 30 minutes. Okay? And we're going to stop exactly on time, so I can obey what Ms. Owens said. So as you receive this list, you have a mixture of courses because I realized I came here in the fall of September of 1981, and I realized in 1984 that I was actually a generalist, and by 1992, I think only the people in the English department knew what I really taught, or what my area of quote-unquote expertise is supposed to be. Because by then, as you can tell from this list, I was a generalist, and I taught just about everything that needed to be taught. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about these classes so that you can make your decision on what you'd like to take. And since most of you in here have probably had an experience, you will know something about what these are. So, I was hired here to teach Introduction to Fine Arts. It was a 2-term course, because when I came to Hendrix, we were on a term system. And so I taught in fall and winter. So if you sign up for that class, we're going to start in Africa, because most people don't know that that's where Egypt really is. And we're going to continue, and we're going to go and stop at the Renaissance. In the second semester, we'll pick up there. We're going to cover sculpture, we're going to cover painting, we're going to cover music, and we're going to cover architecture. And so you will learn some terms. Your test will be slide-based, music-based, and of course you will have to write. Everybody who takes the class with me has to write. After all, you're at a liberal arts institution, whether you want to be or not. And one of the goals of a liberal arts school is that we're supposed to teach you how to communicate. We're supposed to teach you how to work with other people. And we're supposed to teach you how to be analytical. You cannot be analytical answering true-false questions and filling in the blank. It does not work that way. You have to write in complete sentences in my classes. So as you look through this list, if you don't like complete sentences, don't choose any class. Because you have to practice writing. And you will notice I have some quotes down here, and it says, true ease in writing. And many of you, certainly those of you who took 18th century, will recognize this quote. It says, true ease in writing comes from art, not chance, as those move easiest who have learned to dance. So you have to learn how to write. You have to learn how to communicate with people. And that's what you will do. And I will not give you simple questions to repeat what I told you in class. If you're learning anything, you should have some ideas of your own. And you should be able to critique the ideas that I've given you. So that's Intro to Fine Arts. It's a very good class. We actually had a lot of fun. We're teaching it in Reeves, where, because your school did not have at that time really good slide equipment, so we had those old metal slide projector pieces where you had to put the slide inside the metal slip, and then put the metal slip inside the turntable. And if you've ever been upstairs in Reeves, There are exactly 27 steps. And when I came, I could go up the 27 steps. Now I certainly couldn't do that, but during the course, and you remember this, during the course of the classes, I'd have to go up, as you hear a slide hit the wall. So I had to go up there, find it, put it back in the machine, come back downstairs, keep on with the class. But you were always good troopers, you just kept on too, so we kept going. So you think about intro and fine arts. Now, Africa, an interdisciplinary approach, is a new course for us. When I came to Hendrix, nobody was teaching anything about Africa. And I brought a book called Voices. It's a book I had used in the first Arkansas Governor's School. And it had poetry and short stories. And I remember in 1981, the first course I taught, I used Achebe's Things Fall Apart. Some of you, I see some of you nodding, you read that book. And I was really surprised that a school that likes to compare itself to other schools always was not at all doing what other schools were doing. And I thought, well, you're taking a chance on hiring a black person, so you got all of me. And the students were very supportive of that. So we read our African Voices that semester. And I remember Mr. Lyle Rupert, who's now Dr. Rupert, was in my class, and I thought, I'm sure they sat there and wondered, what on earth is she doing? Because I had them reading the Decameron. And those of you who are familiar with it, you know, some people go, oh, we're going to read this nasty book. It's art, and I don't censor. And so you read it or not. And I'm fully aware of this whole business of trigger warnings and whatever, and so I tell my students, now you look at this book. I tell them that this semester. I said, there will be images, because we're reading a book by Husa, The Feast of the Goat, and it is very graphic. And I said, now you look at that, and if you don't want to read that, you need to go sign up for another course, because I'm not going to blank out sheets of paper. We have to learn to understand that creativity is not to be bound by our personal rules or our particular associations. So there are other courses. So that's Africa. Great book. Well, I taught great books for a number of years. That was, of course, Mr. Rupert was in when they were reading the Decameron. Mr. Airy was in class when they read some great books. So we've had a lot of people reading those. Great books eventually became world literature after one of our outside reviewers said that a place like Hendrix ought to have world literature. So I just transferred great books and made it world literature. So this semester, the students in English 265 are reading some very interesting works. Our theme for this semester is corruption and chaos. And so we started with the Bacchae, and I think you remember that, so that we could establish the Apollonian and the Dionysian. And we just finished Sadawi's work, Innocence of the Devil. If you've not read it, you probably should. It's a wonderful work by an Egyptian female, and she talks about the world's three major religions and how they created the oppression of women and also sustain it. And of course, that just upset everybody in the class because we had Christians in the class, we had people who are adherents of Judaism, and certainly people who are adherents of Islam. And I tried to explain to them that you need to be able to read widely. Remember, we're supposed to teach you how to analyze. Well, you can't analyze when you don't know half of what the rest of the world is saying. Okay? You only know your part, so that's not good. So we're reading that. We're going to close the semester with a male Egyptian writer, Mahfuz. And our last work, which the students will start on Monday, is the Karnak Cafe. And he talks about the same thing. But I believe in balance. You've got to give the students some balance so that they understand that our objective here is fairness. It's not preachism. It's to be fair to the literature. So if you take that World Lit course, I don't know what my theme will be, because actually I retire in December, and I have given myself the date of December the 16th. And I think the college says it's the end of the month, but it really doesn't matter. For me, it'll be I'm going to retire. So I'll figure out between now and then, because Hendrix has moved to what I'm going to call an efficiency model. We get emails all the time with due dates on them, telling you got to get this in by. And then if you don't, you get these little emails from people in power telling you that you haven't done something. And so I responded to one of those back here in December and said, well, you've got a choice. If you want me to do all of this, then that means I'll stop talking to students, I'll stop grading papers, and I'll fill out all these forms you're sending me. But I can't do it all at the same time. So you get what you think you want. So now that we are an efficiency model, I turned in 2/3 of my book list. The book list for drama, I wrote the nice lady, Miss Tyler, over there in the bookstore, and I said, I have not had the time to choose 8 plays, but between now and the end of May, I will send you a list. Now surely we can wait. If not, I'll order the books for the students, and they can just get them from me. That's how I approach efficiency. I'm doing my very best, but I'm not going to sit here and run my life by some calendar. You take that. So what else is here? Oh, Introduction to Academic Writing. That apparently has been the bane of my life. People always associate me with that, even though in my classes, and you know this, I have given you wonderful ideas. We have had great times. And all you can remember is that I lowered your grade because you had comma splices. That's terrible. Because I did. And I do. And as I said to the class, I have a wonderful class. I always have wonderful classes in writing. We have 15 wonderful young people, including athletes who are doing very well, who do not miss class, and who write excellent papers. But listen, you're at a liberal arts institution. Do you want to graduate from Hendrix and you don't recognize a comma splice? You'd be like some of these people. I went out to Conway Regional to have surgery in December, and they gave me a form to sign. Well, I don't sign if I don't read. So I was reading, and they had IT apostrophe, and I said, that is wrong. James, it is. Not it's possessive. And so I kept reading, I just started circling. Something that is this era written. You need to hire somebody to teach you how to write these things. It is ridiculous. It's an insult. And that's what I'm saying to you. In Introduction to Academic Writing, I know the students chafe about it, but you write in class with me. We don't write out of class. Now everybody knows that when the young man came to remove the technology, everybody knows I do no tech at all. I pass out sheets of paper, I write on the board. But I also know how to use Google, just like students do. And I know that you can find papers. I've been to some of those places when I've been trying to check phrases in papers. So I know students. I've been one too. And students will find when the crunch, and we're in crunch time here at Hendrix. This week is the last full week of classes. And when I went to class yesterday, I had almost half a class because they had papers due in other classes. So see, you write with me in there, with you, so that I can see your little hand on the paper. It's amazing how many people don't know how to write with their hand. What's wrong with you? So we're having to learn this all over again. You can't actually write a paper. Now, in this class, we capped it at 15. I was successful in getting that done 15 years ago, actually, when I said to the department and to the faculty, nobody teaches writing with 20 and 25 college students. It's impossible. You cannot counsel the students, grade the papers, and teach the class when you have 25 people. And so the faculty agreed, so we capped our classes at 15, which is still too many because as Hendrix compares itself to Swarthmore and these other places, they now have 12 in composition, which is the better number, because I used to have conferences of 15 minutes, now I have conferences of 30 minutes per student. Now, when I see students, all 15 of them, in one class at 30 minutes, I also teach 200 level classes because I have no objection to teaching freshmen. I think they're wonderful. They got to learn too, like everybody else, so I don't object. I don't feel that I have to teach only 300 and 400 level courses. So English majors rarely see me because I'm down there with freshmen and sophomores. But you have to have a smaller class size, and I do line item grading, and they know that. I grade every sentence. I see you shaking your head, that's right, and every word. And I write, what are you trying to say here? Because I tell them we cover only 5 areas. These are the areas the faculty voted on when we put in the writing requirement. We sample the faculty, and we ask them, what about our student writing bothers you? And they said, well, it's not coherent. They don't know how to use words, and they don't know how to use, I remember this very clearly, they don't know how to use the apostrophe. Do you people in English know how to teach them how to use the apostrophe? But yeah, we know. Okay. And so I tell them, we're going to work on clarity, because whatever you communicate needs to be clear. Even if you are using, it's amazing, and I know all of you have these experiences. You get an email, you read it, you don't know what the heck that person said. Okay, so you got to write one back to clarify something there. And so now, what did you mean by this? And they write another one that's probably worse than the first one. And so it's a waste of time. So I say to them, your writing has to be clear. Clarity begins with the word, okay? And then it moves to the syntax. So we spend time talking about diction. And so I give them on the first day of class my rules about diction. We do not say, it's a nice day. What is nice about it? That's an empty word. So I say, if you use nice, you're going to lose how many points? And I let them vote. Oh, how about 1? I said, you must be kidding. So I say, how about 5? For every time you use that word, unless it is where? Answer, it's your time. Where could you use nice and I wouldn't penalize you? I hear you saying it. You're just like the students in my class. You may certainly use it if it's part of a direct quotation. I'm not asking you to change somebody's speech. I'm asking you to change how you write. Nice is empty, so we do not say make your list, make your list. What's another word we should not use because it's empty? Interesting. You remember that, right? What's interesting? So those are empty words. They don't mean anything. And you cannot use the word thing. I am so sick of thing. Okay? It tells you nothing. There's a noun that you can substitute. So if it's a cow, call it a cow. Don't say that thing in the field. You know, the reader never knows. So we get our list. And so then I say, we can't use intensifiers. And they say, oh. So I say, what's the difference between it's hot and it's very hot? Can you tell? No. But if you tell me it's 75 degrees versus 105, I think I know how hot it is. So you see, language matters. You don't just throw a word on the page. So we work at the level of diction. Then we put our sentences together and we punctuate them. We don't run them into each other like, you know, train pieces where the car runs into the caboose and never stops. You have to stop. You have to give writers and readers signals. And that's what punctuation does. It signals how to read what you have just given. So if you want us to keep going, you can give us run-on sentences. Not very good now. But if you want us to pause, this is like all these roundabouts in Conway. Haven't you had the roundabout experience? Somebody gets there now. They think yield means stop, which it doesn't. Okay? Well, that's the way the comma works. Comma said pause. It didn't say stop. Okay? So you signal to the reader how to read what you have written. That's important because it's part of your message. And then you have to be coherent. You can't just drop thoughts in a paragraph. And I said, we read the thing, where did you get that sentence? Why is it in this paragraph? It needs to be someplace else. Now that's what you're paying your $55,000 for. You're paying it. Don't you think that's what you should be paying it for? You should hold us accountable. You don't want to walk out of here and you can't write a sentence. I would be disturbed. And I told my students that I don't want you to come out and teach. I'm sorry, I'm going down my list. What time is it? I'm going down my list here. Where was I? Okay, it was on Introduction to Academic Writing, since everybody talks about that class. Well, the other area that we cover is this. Now, when I turn this loose, like I mentioned here, I have no control over that. And that's what you have to remember about your writing. It doesn't matter how much you say, oh, I know how to spell that word. Well, if you know how to spell it, where should you have spelled it? On that sheet of paper. So you can't control writing once you turn it loose. I have had to say that to the students who supervise the Troubadour, where they want to put these pictures in there of themselves. You know, Hendrix is such a liberal place, and we tell the seniors, you can submit your own photo. And then they submit them standing up there in the nude with a little cap over here. Say, no, that will not go in that book. Well, you're censoring the book. And you say, you don't censor. I said, I'm saving your life. Run for something. No, you can't control where a piece of writing goes once it's loose. And all of you know that. And so you do the work before you turn it loose. And that's what we worked at, because those of you who may be older than the students who were here in 1981 probably know that when I came to Hendrix College, you could pass English with a D. And I was so shocked. I thought, I can't believe that. Because I had been teaching for 10 years already on college campuses, and I thought, I went to a good liberal arts school, and Spelman didn't let me pass with a grade of D. And here I'm sitting up here with students, and you're saying D is okay. And I remember Mr. Robert Merriweather came, and he said, well, I need to talk to you. I said, okay. And he said, now, we pass a lot of courses here with D. I said, you probably shouldn't do that either. We're not going to pass writing with a grade of D, because that says you can't write. I don't care what else you think. So I spent my time working, and I looked up what I had written. So I had to prepare a document to convince the faculty that we should require students to pass writing courses with a grade of C or above. And it was then that Dr. John Churchill and Dr. Rosemary Hindenburg had read about writing across the curriculum. And they decided we should do something about it here. And we went on a retreat to the Murphys. We went to Mississippi. And we spent time talking about how we could bring an improved writing program to Hendrix College. And I said, it has to be one where a student must earn a C. I said, we should be embarrassed to know that we're turning students out because writing wasn't required. So you're going to get a D in a non-required course? That's horrible. And so we came back, I wrote the document, and that's where we began the path to writing across the curriculum. And I have always held to the belief that if you vote on something in faculty meeting, you should support it when it comes into the curriculum. So I voted for it, and that's why I've taught writing consistently every semester since I've been here, because I believe in it. You have to be true to your beliefs. And I thought, Spelman taught me much better than that. And I know, the idea when I came to Hendrix, and all of you have heard this, black people can't speak English, so they can't write it. And so the whole notion was, can she speak English and can she write it? Well, Hendrix took that chance after meeting me in the first governor's school and thought, I know how to put subjects and verbs together. I'm not an idiot. Plus, I went to a good liberal arts school, okay, that taught me better. And so I want to pass that on. So my students write, and they write well. And I tell them, I know when you're getting it. And they say, how do you know? I judge it by how long it takes me to grade a set of papers. And if I can move through the set, you've got it. So I told them last week, I said, you're writing well. You're not making mistakes. And they are writing in class, and they're writing very difficult papers. This one they finished Friday required that they write an evaluative essay using comparison contrast based on 2 other essays about cheating in college. I thought that was appropriate. So they had to read the essays, we discussed the essays, then they had to choose to recommend one of those essays to the staff of explorations, because you must give writers an audience. And I always tell the students, what if your paper is number 20? And that professor picks it up, and that professor has read 19 other papers, many of which probably weren't very good, and here's yours. You can't afford to have your writing be flat. So you have to learn how to move beyond to be verbs, for example. And so I just give them a little, practice, and I say, well, what if you have a sentence that says, John looked out the window? I said, well, you don't know very much. So let's go back to the verb, because the verb controls the power of the sentence. Tell me how John looked out the window. Tell me. What did he do? Thank you. He gazed out the window. Now you're learning something, right? Sure. You see, it's that easy. That's what Jacobson says, because writing has theory. There are a lot of people who think only literature has theory. Well, so sorry for you. Writing is theoretically based, and it comes from communication, because this whole notion of writing the sentence and the syntactical structure comes from communication, came out of Scotland. But most people don't know anything about writing in the first place, and so they mess it up by trying to bring their expertise, which they don't have, to it, and tell other people what to do. So we must move past that. But I would recommend that class. Remember, writing is not required at Hendrix. Now, we're going to study drama. We had a good time doing that. We read some plays. I think we ended up, I always start with the Greeks, and then I move to the contemporary period. I always include at least one African playwright, and so Soyinka is my playwright by choice. So I always include him because the students would tell me, well, we've never read an African playwright, and we don't know anything about Africa. Well, now's the time to learn, so we just keep going. So you might want to learn something about that. Literary analysis, I created that course because, as I just said to you, I don't get to teach upper class English majors because I teach 100 and 200 level courses. So I was getting, Ken Story was still here then, and I was getting English majors who couldn't scan a poem. I thought, there's something wrong here. And so I'd go back and ask my colleagues, well, why can't these students scan a line of poetry? Because Alexander Pope says, I know, I don't blame you, laugh, because you know I was going to mention it. He says the sound should be what? An echo of the sense. Okay. And so that means you need to be able to scan it. You just don't run through the poem. That's ridiculous. So I thought, why don't we try creating a course requiring it of English majors as a gateway course to the major so that they learn the specificities of the genres. So that's how we got literary analysis. Now, it's in a totally different iteration. It's being taught by our newer faculty, and they're doing a superb job with the course. But my idea was, I don't want to teach students who don't know how to read a poem, because I teach poetry. All these courses you see down here are poetry-based, 17th century, 17th century. Also, now, the college can't require you to know anything about the Bible, but I spend my time going to class with my Bible, my handbook to literature, because bless our little hearts, we don't go to Sunday school anymore. So we don't know anything about these Bible people. So I don't know how you think you're going to read John Donne, George Herbert, Herrick, and not know anything about the Bible. They were all Anglican ministers. They knew a lot about the Bible, and they have biblical references. And so you can't just gloss over them as if they didn't count. And you certainly can't read John Milton without understanding his thorough knowledge of the Bible. So my goodness, young people, you need to read. I took courses in the Bible as literature, both as an undergraduate and as a graduate. So you have to have that preparation. Well, my students don't have that, so I had to bring my little Bible, and I had to read. We started something simple. Absalom and Achitophel, right? John Dryden's masterpiece. Well, who on earth was Absalom? Well, we ought to know if we know Samuel. Thank you. That's right. So you can't read his poem and understand anything he's doing, Dryden, that is, if you don't know the story. And the story is in the Bible. And the Bible is not taboo at Hendrix College. We were a Methodist affiliated, notice I use the word were. The faculty has spent an inordinate amount of time trying to figure out what our relationship to the United Methodist Church ought to be, which I find very interesting because I thought, it's in the darn catalog. You cannot read it. So for the last 7 years, I I've had to sit in faculty meeting in my little spot over there and listen to people say, well, we're just punishing people by having invocation. We're just punishing people by talking about the Methodist Church in the mission statement. Well, what are you going to do with it? Throw it out? And I've said to them, you don't know enough to want to get rid of that church, because you weren't here when Hendrix was in hot water about its liberal values. And that's right, who stepped up for us? The United Methodist Church. And you want to dump it? I don't think so. You need to know. That's the problem. Now, all of us, except me, I guess I'd say, all of us that come into Hendrix from R1 University, Research 1. What's the first rule in research? Research, that's right. Do research. So instead of getting here emoting on what you don't like about prayer, why don't you research this place? You just came to do an interview and you're going to leave. You should know something about it before you decide to dump what it has. Because if you know anything about a liberal arts school, liberal arts schools that are good, now the good ones, they remain true to their mission. They don't change with the winds of change, just to change. Hendrix needs to remain true to its mission. And part of that mission is our relationship to the United Methodist Church. Because we're not out of hot water, and I tell them so many people come into Arkansas, but do you understand that Arkansas has never ratified the ERA? So what are we talking about here? You need to understand where you are and what this place means. I'm not a Hendrix graduate, but I know what it means because I know what it has done in the past. And I know how it has stood by this faculty when we have been out on a limb, but they stood there just the same, even if they didn't believe in what we were doing. They never let us go. And that's important to have. And it's important to write it well. And so Dr. Susui, who is here, has asked us to clarify our mission. And we needed to do that. But we need to do it with a clarity and equity and understanding. The first word in research is research before you talk. That's what I tell my students. It's clear you don't know what you're talking about. Be quiet. We only have 50 minutes in here, so I cannot waste 15 of them listening to you talk about something you know what you're talking about. So let's move on. That's what we do. And see, I'm at my 3:30. I told them, I figured they asked me what my topic was. I didn't have a topic. I don't give lectures. So let me see. Is there any other course here I need to tell you about? Oh, well, my good friend Alexander Pope, a little learning is a dangerous thing. Well, you can tell. Our recent election was proof that a little learning is a dangerous thing. You should drink deep or taste not the Pyrean spring. Now, our electorate has a little learning. Okay? So we need to redouble our efforts at colleges and universities. It doesn't matter how you vote, but you at least need to know what you're voting for. And you need to know not to vote against your own best interests when those interests are shared by other people. So I have said that explorations, bless his heart, was trying to teach. I used to tell Mr. Churchill, and those of you who are here, we had to create a guide to the academic program. Yes, why would we need to create a guide to understanding the catalog? Doesn't that seem strange to you? And so we made the argument, I heard it in faculty meeting not too long ago, well, the students just don't understand. I said, well, my students all understand it. What's wrong with yours? So we created explorations because we said the students don't know how to go to Hendrix College. They can't read and understand. I thought, that would help us. You see why I need to go, don't you? Last thing I'm going to tell you about, and see if you have any questions, is Western intellectual traditions. This is another one of the sports parties at Hendrix. I don't, I said something about this yesterday, so I'm sure, I think I rub people the wrong way all the time, and it's never intended. I'm a pleasant person, and I like people. But I guess I do. Bother people, maybe. But listen, those of you who had wit, raise your hand. See, there you go. Now, you know a lot. I can't say that right now about what we're doing, okay? Because we tried to give you a foundation in the seminal text of Western literature. We didn't ask you to believe it. We wanted you to know. You should know something about Plato. You should know something about Aristotle. You should know something about 17th century science. You should know who Descartes is. These are names you've never heard of. How do I teach 17th century? My first students had never heard of Hobbes and Locke. So I had to go Xerox, something on Hobbes, Xerox, something on Locke, and I thought, this is ridiculous. We're not giving them the foundation because we technically do not have a common course. We have a course that has a common name. It is not a common course. Hendrix needs to look at what it's doing, okay? Because now remember, we have become efficient. Efficiency does not equal learning. We have become people of quantification, and our folks have heard me say it. We quantify everything. How many of this did you do? How many of this are you planning to do? That doesn't lead to learning. It just gives you a set of figures so you don't have to come and talk to me and ask me what I'm doing. Okay? So we need to get away from that. We're not strangers. We used to use the word the Hendrix community, and I have noticed that we don't use that word much anymore because I think we know intrinsically that we are no longer a community, and we need to be one because that's where learning takes place. When all of us have a common goal for all the students, and not one of these publishing goals for ourselves. You have heard me say, I just want you to look at quotes number 2 and number 3, and I promise I'll shut up. True wit is nature to advantage dressed, what oft was thought but ne'er so well expressed. That's Mr. Pope. In his essay on criticism, 1711, he was 23 years old, but he understood. If you think, people say because intro to academic writing is expository writing. I stopped teaching writing about short stories and all that because I thought I had to teach the short story, then teach how to write about it. No. We're going to have the students do the research. And fortunately, the faculty, I know last semester, Dr. Sutsui had to be interviewed by the students, I don't know how many times, but they need to learn the various sources that they can use to document. And sometimes you need to interview a real source, and you need to know how to document that in your papers. So what does he say? He said it is to advantage dressed. And what Pope meant by dress would be all the other words that you use to express an idea. And you can't tell me that that's not creativity. You can be creative in expository writing. And we need to be sure that we help people to understand that. Now I'm stopping. I've been over 35 minutes, okay? Do you have any questions about any of these wonderful classes that you would like to take with me? I'm sorry? Oh, Zornil Hurston. I decided when the Hurston group of MLA produced a video on Hurston's life. And I went to the ALA meeting, the American Literature Association. I'm not an Americanist. We have 2 wonderful Americanists in our department, but nobody was teaching Hurston. And so I went principally so that I could see the premiere of the documentary. It was wonderful. So then I came back and I created a seminar on Hurston so that we could offer it. And of course I asked, you don't want to step into somebody else's territory, so I asked the Americanists if it were okay for me to teach Hurston. And also, do I have my Hawthorne seminar on there? No! See, I teach that too. But anyway, I asked them if it were okay for me to do, and they said yes. So what we've done, in fact, I just completed an independent study with a student who will be a senior, and he wanted to do Hurston. We read the major works, the major short stories, but we also read her play, and we look at the material she left, which people should examine when she was doing research work on the Federal Writers Project. She actually collected Black dialect and she uses it in her stories, and we need to become conversant with that because it is a new creation and it exists. And Miss Dr. Elkins was here talking about the intersection of the visual, the literary, and the craft. Hurston meets that criteria fully in that work. That's what we do. Had a wonderful time. I actually had, last time I taught the full course, I had 11 students. But you see, we have so few people in our department because we're not as important as the natural sciences and the social sciences. So we have so few people that we have to teach our classes every 3 or 4 years. So I will be leaving in December. I won't be teaching Miss Zora anymore, here anyway, but it was fun. Hearing her, having the students do the research, learn something about the true Harlem Renaissance from the black perspective, and also the black writer. I thought, well, maybe I should. You know, it's kind of ironic. People think that if you're black, you teach black literature. And I thought, well, I know about it, but I didn't teach it. I fell in love with the people in the Restoration, so that's what I want to teach. But I thought it doesn't mean I don't know anything about it. I did read it, so I created a course that involved black writers internationally so that we can understand how collectively black writers tend to say the same thing about experiences, whether they're in Africa, in the Caribbean, South America, because people forget. And even this semester, my students weren't aware that in Africa there had been Indians there for as long as there had been Africans. So you have to learn that the literature really does have an international flavor. So yeah. Other questions or comments? You're free to disagree with me. I entertain disagreement. Yes, ma'am.
The restoration literature, designing women.
Well, we have made our way to the country wife. And we are introducing the female rake. And we started with Mr. Rochester, and I think the poor students were just, their eyes were going up like this. Because they read Fair Chloris in a Pigsty. And I told them, I said, now what's the problem with this? And we didn't understand that Chloris, okay, is a trapping from the Renaissance. You know, a nymph, a pleasant nymph. So why is she in a pigsty? You see the disconnect there. And so then we go on, it's a very visual, Rochester was a bad boy. And so we started with him and John Dryden because I said, you need to know who the major satirists of the period are. And we read Artemisia de Chloe, which is Rochester's long satire on love. And so I told them, if they read and understood it, they're very good class, then they would understand the country wife. So we're looking at these women who are as aggressive as the men in having these assignations, and we call it intrigue. So we read Molière first, because I told them that's where the playwrights ran when they beheaded the monarch and closed the theaters. They went to France, they went to Spain. Well, women were acting on the stage there, where they weren't acting on the stage in England. So we've been reading about these women who are pretty aggressive. It's kind of interesting. They're doing 3 plays. We have 2 days of class left. We meet on Tuesdays and Thursdays, so we'll try to finish those. But we're having a good time, talking about lead-based makeup, putting it on, and no wonder you have pock marks on your skin. What are you going to do when you're putting lead on your face every day? Lack of understanding, that sort of thing. Other questions or comments? So remember, I entertain disagreement. The students can tell you.
So I'm curious, as the first African-American faculty member, what would you say to the school as they look forward about diversity at Hendrix, both on faculty and among students, and what they should be thinking about?
Well, I have said, thank you for your question. Notice I was avoiding it. Because I said yesterday in the Friday afternoon discussion, I said so many things about Hendrix, and I said, Saturday I will be a very good person, a very good spokesperson for the institution. But unfortunately, Dr. Tsutsui, that's an area that he has begun work on. We have a long way to go. And I said that to the faculty a long time ago, and I'll say it to you just now. This is my 36th year How many black faculty people do you think there are at Hendrix College? 3. Now, wouldn't you think, and Dr. Jackson is recent for us, and so is our professor in chemistry. Now, wouldn't you think in 36 years we'd have more than 3?
Yes.
To be the school we claim we are?
Yes.
So we haven't done very much, and I've often thought about it, and I remember sitting in here in faculty meeting a couple of years ago, and they were just rambling on about something, and using this word quality, because somebody had asked something similar to your question. And every time somebody would speak, they said, well, we just can't find any qualified African Americans. And I heard that until I was sick of it. And so I raised my hand and said, why don't you use that adjective when you talk about any other area? Why is it that you only use it when you talk about African Americans? I said, so I am to assume that every one of you is qualified. I said, and I can tell you, you're not. I was tired of it. And more recently, it cropped up again in the Hendrix magazine. And I was just reading the magazine out of interest. And they were talking about our current president had gone out and worked on recruiting us some African American students. And they had worked on it. But they wrote this article about Kip Delta, and there was that word that I just detest. You know, I feel about qualified the way I feel about awesome. I tell my students, you can't write anything else. Don't you write that word in anything for me. Awesome is horrible. People think, oh, everything is awesome. It's sickening. Same thing is true about that word. So they described the Kip Delta kids as qualified. And 2 pages over, they were talking about the Latino students. They didn't say they had to be qualified. So I had to sit and write me another 2-page little note. And explain again why, you see, that's what I mean when I say language counts. Yes. And that's why I tell students, you have to watch what you say. Because there will always be somebody who will say, and take exception. So no, I think Hendrix could do a lot better. I think the problem has been systemic. I said that because we've had about 50,000 iterations of diversity committees, and I have served on those. They felt, the Hendrix community, when I came here, that the black students should be responsible for Black History Month. So we finally figured out that we weren't doing it for us. All of us know black people. We don't need to be responsible. You do. And so we have finally gotten it so that the black people, the black students here don't have to plan the program, do the program, and do everything. It's just simple. So we've come a long way, but we haven't come far enough. And the sad thing about all of this is that over the years, the students have had, because I was here for 14 years by myself, the students have only had one person. And you can tell from just hearing me today, you see what kind of person I am. They needed another mom. They can see that all black people aren't like me. I remember saying that to Mr. Churchill. I said, now you keep pushing me, and I'm going to get a sign, and I'm going to parade in front of the true front of Fawcett Hall, which is the front that faces Harding. Most people don't know that. But that is the true original front of that building. And so I'm just going to parade by myself and show people how terrible this is. Because we didn't pay attention. And I do think having black students here in numbers, having black faculty here in numbers, that's good for all students, not just for black students. I just thought of personally, because Hendrix has been good to me. They've tolerated, you know, you hear what I do. That's how I talk, that's what I say, it's how I think. You know, one of the beautiful things about Spelman College is that they taught us that we had brains and that we were supposed to use them. My parents told me I had good sense and I was supposed to use it. So I didn't have to be crippled by somebody else's sense or somebody else's lack of sense. And so I've been able to stay at this school because I simply told people what I thought and was going on about my business. They've gone on about theirs. And I'm still here. I hope that answers your question. It's a sad state in my view. And see, here's the other thing. If you're going to bring these students in, you have to have services for them. And that's part of the problem. We don't have them. And we need to admit the truth. We do not have the range of services that we need. Now, we're working on it. So I want to be sure you understand that. But it's not quite where it needs to be. We need developmental writing classes, for example. We need tiers of classes, for example. But we've done very little in that area, and I'm hoping between now and December that I will see that we will do more, because we need to. Other questions or concerns, and I'm glad to see Mr. Pryor here. He's one of the people that helped us to start SBC, which is Students for Black Culture and not Students of Black Culture. People get that all mixed up too. Well, it's all Black organization for the Black students. That organization has always had non-Black student members. And the whole idea was, you know, if you were here, if you went in the campus center, the music was something you've never heard in your life. You're like, well, why should I go to a dance and that's all they're going to play?
Right.
But these students went. I was very proud of them. And so they worked to bring knowledge of Black achievement to this campus. And I'm very proud of them for having done so. I'm also very proud of the English majors that we have. They lived through my classes with this poetry, with me making them read out loud and me stopping them, saying that is not a funeral dirge. Read it, so that we can learn to read the poem, get an understanding of the poem. They've been very tolerant of me. And so whenever I go in a class, I always look up and say, I'm surprised. I'm always surprised that I have any students. You know how students talk. You know, they have heard. You know, and I think, bless your little hearts. It's all right. I'm not going to hurt you.
What was your favorite class that you taught?
Oh, my favorite has to be 18th century with Alexander Pope. He's my all-time favorite writer. And I enjoy it because I think he understood what poetry and musicality is all about. So that's my favorite class, but I love writing. A recent reviewer who reviewed our department, I knew she was talking about me, she said, one of them even said that she loved writing. Well, I do, because you can see, it's one of the few areas that you can see immediate improvement. And that's what makes writing worthwhile. Once I teach a lesson, and I tell them, because we only work on one concept per writing, and when I can see that they know how to use the concept, that's gratifying. And so, yeah, I love teaching. I don't see anything wrong with it. And what people don't understand is that writing as a movement, as a discipline, is outstripping literature 4-to-1. And they need to understand that. Because a person who's trained in rhetoric and composition is a person who knows how to teach writing. And our campus doesn't understand that yet. Maybe they will before I leave. Oh, yes, ma'am.
I never took your class because I heard about you.
That's Miss Rhonda back there.
But I want to articulate to the Hendrix faculty and staff, a part of the brilliance of having a diverse faculty is that even when people are not taking your classes, they are coming to you for counsel, and you were a part of the sustainability and the retention process. And so I'm very sad that you're leaving, and I hope that the powers that be will know that it wasn't just about who you were in class, but it was about having access to someone who looked like you.
Well, thank you. So we're supposed to do something because I told her over and over I did not want to do this. I had no lecture. I thought she just told me I had to for your sake.
Dr. Hines, thank you so much. To all of you who came today to this standing room only last lecture, thank you so much for listening to one of the most shy, retiring, and reticent members of the Hendrix faculty. As Dr. Hines was talking about clarity of expression, I started thinking of some words and expressions that capture her for me, and I think you will have words and phrases that capture her for you in your life. Pioneer, teacher, mentor, scholar, role model, colleague, friend, speaker of truth to power, conscience for our campus and our community, advocate for good grammar, clear writing, and her students, a resolute voice for justice, high standards, integrity, and the common sense that isn't as common as it should be. Alice, we're very pleased to share with you that just over 13 years ago, in a joint effort of Darren Williams, Roby Brock, and the late Luvonda Ross, a scholarship in your name was established. The intent was to keep this scholarship anonymous until your retirement. Through their efforts and the efforts of others in the last month, including Walter Pryor, Bracken Darrell, and Doug Blackman, your scholarship has grown, with many of your former students and members of the Board of Trustees contributing. The scholarship will assist African American students from Arkansas. We are grateful for the outpouring of gifts from so many, including many in this room, including just this week a pledge from an anonymous alum and former student of Dr. Hines for $250,000 in your Please know how much you mean to us, to your former students, to the Hendrix community. You have made us better people and a better institution, and your legacy lives on this campus in all the folks in this room you've touched and all those beyond. Thank you truly, Alice.
I was busy trying to discourage people. And thank you for the scholarship. I think that is so very kind of you. I will donate myself.